Howdy, this here's Professor UD Guru. Our topic today is how I stop sciatica and lower back pain. I've had this problem most of my adult life. It started out when I was 23 or 24. I had just broke up with this girlfriend of mine out in California after we left this commune that we lived in because they didn't get along. Her and the commune didn't get along, and then I found out that once we were living somewhere else, her and me didn't get along either. So I told her I wanted to go off by myself someplace and prove that I would make a good family man. So I went back to Kansas and found me pretty much the first full-time job that I ever took serious. And that's when my sciatica began. I even shaved off my beard and all that. I went to the pipe organ factory and asked for a job one day. I was a long-haired hippie freak. And they said, oh, well, don't call us, we'll call you. You know how it goes. And then I said, okay. I started walking toward the door, and I said, yeah, I'm a piano tuner. And they said, get back in here. And they sat me down in the personnel officer's office and gave me a job. It was a whole, maybe $1 over minimum wage, but it was a full-time job. And my sciatica began immediately for the first time. I didn't know it was sciatica at the time. I thought there was something wrong with me. Sciatica, lower back pain. It took me many years to figure out what to do about it. A friend of mine said after several years of this limping around half the time, a friend of mine said, hey, I think it's called sciatica. So I kept that in mind. I must say that having a full-time job and the notion that I could bring in a steady income and take responsibility for my own existence is quite a task for me at that time, because I was basically more or less a transient of sorts. Not that I ever slept on the street, but I did sleep under a few bridges, from hitchhiking here and there. Hitchhiked all over the western U.S., back and forth, usually without much money, sometimes without any money, sometimes without anything, like a warm coat. I'll tell that story sometime. In fact, prior to this, when I was only 19, I recall during the explosion of activity created by my actually leaving my parents' house and finding myself blowing in the wind for quite some time. At the age of 19, I recall standing at an off-ramp trying to hitchhike and thinking to myself, well, by golly, I think I've reached retirement age. I'm just going to retire. So anyway, back in California, I'd have been part of the Rivendell Community Support Services Incorporated, which was basically a socialist commune that had I'd say we had about 8 houses in Santa Cruz County. And I learned a lot while I was there. I got to have jobs. I got to be a dishwasher. I got to be a garbage man. I got to be a food purchaser I did all these jobs for the commune. And, when I had to change jobs, they let me. And so I got some experience and I got some feedback. And by the time I left that commune, I was there off and on for a few years. By the time I left, I had this girlfriend, and, I just told you that story. So here I am in Kansas, and I've decided to take this job seriously. I keep repeating this because it's part of the situation. It has something to do with the actual cause of most people's sciatica and lower back pain. Let's skip forward to the best full-time job I ever had, and by far the longest I ever kept one. I was working for someone else in Stockton, California at a place called the Postal Center. So some of you will remember me from there because I was there such a god-awful long time, 6.5, 7.5, I think it was 6.5 years. The boss was a cigar-chomping Republican named Mr. Murray. He used to call me Tiger, so I thought I could call him Bob, but didn't work out that way. He answered to Bob maybe once, and after that he started ignoring me. After about 3 days, I said to myself, well, I guess I better try calling him Mr. Murray. And I tried it, and he spun around in his chair and said, yes, Tiger, what do you want? Okay, so that was one of my early lessons in being respectful to the elderly, because he was in his 70s, although he looked like he was maybe 62 and acted like he was 52. So for 6.5 years he refused to fire me, and that was quite an experience for me. I call him my mentor. He lived to the age of 93, but after he sold the business and I was working for someone else, we lost contact more or less, because he hadn't perfected me yet, and, he already had plenty of friends, put it that way. But during my time with Mr. Murray at the Postal Center, where he let me pretend to be the manager and refused to fire me for 6 years, one day a man come in and bought a stamp from me, a postage stamp from me. And he put it on his letter and gave it to me to mail. And I looked at it and said, oh, you're from Aikido school. And he said, yeah, I have an Aikido school called New School Aikido. This was, his name's John Smart. He was the founder of New School Aikido, which he started in Stockton, California, I believe. That's where I met him. He had a big dojo. He invited me to come over sometime and experience Aikido for myself. I said, well, I've been interested in Aikido for a long time. I like the way it looks when they do it. And I knew that it was what you call a non-violent sport, not like judo or karate or something where you're kicking and hitting and have to pull your punches so people don't get hurt. Aikido, on the other hand, is made so that people won't get hurt unless you do it wrong. Occasionally someone gets hurt because they do it wrong. John Smart called it the art of peace, because one of the main ideas is that you don't piss off the attacker and make him attack you even harder. You don't hurt him, you don't piss him off, because if you do hurt him, you do piss him off. Okay, so that's one of their points of view. And I eventually got up the nerve, because me and team sports don't get along. I prefer ping pong because there's only one person for me to deal with at a time. But I got too close and fell in. I got interested. I joined up, and Mr. Murray said, go for it, dude. You can have time off to attend. I mean, he knew I needed it. He knew I needed a mentor. In fact, later on when he sold the company, one of the last things he said to me was, he said, the first day I met you, Scott, because he called me Scott, that's my middle name. The first day I met you, you were the most insecure person I ever met. So, yeah, he was happy to let me have time off, as much time off as I wanted, to go to Aikido class as often as I wanted to go. So that was another benefit, besides the fact that it was the most fun I ever had doing anything of an athletic nature. Unfortunately, we had this thing called the forward roll that I did not learn properly, and I kept doing it wrong, and I didn't realize that the fact that it hurt my back while I was doing it meant I was doing it wrong. Later on, I eventually took a class from one of the assistant instructors on how to do a forward roll properly, and I found out what I was doing wrong. I was taking them literally. I was going forward. You're supposed to roll to your side. I didn't realize that, and I was hurting my back. I was tweaking my lower back every time I did it. And there was also a certain amount of tension in my life, a lot of stress in my life at this time, because our main assistant at the Postal Center was a woman who Mr. Murray and everybody else who met her was very fond of her. People just loved this person, but she had a hard time with schedules and coming to work and getting to work on time. I don't know why, but I was jealous because she got so much slack and I was being so responsible, and also because I was so immature. I was only like 35, 36, 37 around that time. Pretty young still, pretty stupid, very immature socially and emotionally. So Mr. Murray had a crush on this girl. I mean, he was in his 70s and she was, 25 or 26, 27. So he was complaining about her always being late and taking too many days off, but he was complaining to me. And she was complaining to me about him because he wasn't in a very good mood for some reason. I was in the middle of this invisible tug of war that they were not having with each other, but then again they were doing it through me, which was my fault. I allowed it to happen. It was a complicated situation, okay? That's all I have to say. And it caused a lot of stress. So I think what happened is I had a minor injury to my lower back, stress to the back, tweaked a little bit, a little stretched out too much, sudden stretching out too much because of my body weight flying in the wrong direction. And then it was exacerbated, made worse, and prolonged by stress and tension. We'll get to that. I already said probably that, in my opinion, stress and tension are the main cause of most sciatica and lower back pain. And we'll get to more of an explanation for that pretty soon. It got to the point where I couldn't do Aikido. I could hardly walk up the stairs to the dojo. So I was just watching other people do Aikido. I was still going to the class, but I was just watching. And it took me like 5 minutes just to climb the stairs because my back pain was so bad. I started going to a chiropractor. Mr. Murray let me go to the chiropractor. He said, okay, whatever you need to do, go to the chiropractor. You have a sore back, go to the chiropractor. And I was going to this new agey chiropractor, and he was doing some sort of weird thing. He wasn't like popping joints anymore because he said somebody sued him for popping their neck and they got hurt. So he stopped popping joints, and he went into this new agey kind of chiropractor stuff. I forget what it was called, but we were all in this dark room, like all of us patients, and all in this big dark room laying on cots. And he'd come around and touch us just a little bit, barely touch us. And he said it was some sort of magical new age garbage, basically. That's not what he said. That's what I eventually figured out after I went to him for a month and spent $1,000, and it was like, this guy's just barely touching me. He's not doing anything. This is ridiculous. And in the meantime, Mr. Murray was also having stress, obviously, and he started going to a different chiropractor, a conventional chiropractor. So I started going to that chiropractor instead. And this guy tried to pop my joint, but I was in a lot of pain, and he really couldn't. He tried to force it, and he learned his lesson. One time he tried to force something, and my hand flew out, and I just happened to have my fist balled up, and my hand flew out, and accidentally I smacked him in the nuts with my fist. And I was so sorry, but I kind of probably wanted to. He deserved it anyways. And one day I said, well, I don't think this is helping. And he said, oh, we're not finished with you. Meanwhile, one of our customers had come into the postal center, and we were talking about chiropractor because Mr. Murray had got mad at this chiropractor because he accidentally learned that if you pay cash, they charge less, but if they charge to the insurance company, which he was doing, they charge more. And when Mr. Murray found out they were charging his insurance company more than they would have been charging him personally if he was paying cash, he got mad and quit going. He said, I'm not going back to that guy. So one of his customers was talking to him about an experience he had. This guy was a plumber, I think, plumber or an electrician or something. And he had gone to a chiropractor's house to work on his house. And when he went in, the chiropractor was sitting on a recliner with earphones, earbuds or whatever, listening to a tape. And then the chiropractor left to go to work, and the electrician guy was alone in the house. So just for the fun of it, he picked up the little tape player and looked at what he was listening to. And the chiropractor had been listening to a tape called How to Get Your Clients to Come Back 3 Times More Often. So me and Mr. Murray put 2 and 2 together and stopped giving our money to chiropractors altogether. And I would have to say that my whole adult life, I have been very fond of popping my joints. And one of our UPS drivers saw me popping my neck one time. And he said, dude, I know some people that are old and they pop their neck a lot when they're kids, when they're young. And he said, those people, they say they have a very stiff neck now and they can't pop anything. And guess what? I'm 68. I have a permanently stiff neck now, probably from sitting in front of the computer. I don't think it's from popping my neck, but I can't pop my neck either. I can pop it once on one side, but if I ever pop it on the other side, I got pain for 3 days. So I don't pop my neck anymore. I can still pop some of my joints, but the right way to adjust your joints and stuff is go outside and work in the garden. That, you know, pull up weeds, push a wheelbarrow, dig a hole, that kind of stuff. That's what your body needs, not joint popping. So here I am. I've been wearing a neck brace for weeks and weeks. I'm no longer going to chiropractors. I don't know what to do. I can hardly move. It's hard to bend over and pick up something off the ground. I've got terrible sciatica running up and down my leg and my back, and my lower back hurts like crazy. It spazzes out no matter what I do. I can hardly move. I can hardly get out of bed. I mean, the fronts of my thighs have gone numb. It was bad. It was really getting bad. The fronts of my thighs had gone numb. Okay, and when I was much younger, I had sciatica that was so bad that when I used to sleep on the floor on a piece of foam because I was a hippie, and when my alarm clock rang, it would take me 20 minutes not to start getting up, but I'd start getting up immediately, but then it would take me 20 minutes to crawl across my bedroom floor, small bedroom, to turn off the alarm clock. And that's how bad my sciatica was when I was much younger, like 25, 26. So here I am, no chiropractors, nothing, and we had a phenomenon at that time called Barnes & Noble. Maybe you still have that in America. It's a big bookstore that put all the little bookstores out of business. And so one day, it occurred to me that, you know, I spent $1,000 on chiropractors. Why didn't I go to the bookstore and look for a book on back pain? Because I'm a book guy. I've read hundreds of books. So I went to Barnes & Noble, and there was the book for me. It was called Mind Over Back Pain by John E. Sarno. Is that right? Yeah. John E. Sarno, M.D. He's a medical doctor of some kind. I figured, well, this is probably a stupid book, but he does say M.D., and it's probably a bunch of New Age mumbo-jumbo, but I'll still try it. And I'll try this first because it sounds very easy. It was a small book. The reason I was driving around going to bookstores was that I had to take the day off. I couldn't work. My back hurt too much. So Mr. Murray told me to go home. I couldn't move. So I struggled to get in my car. I got to the Barnes & Noble, struggled to get out of the car, struggled to walk in there, bought the book, went home, and lay in bed with all my pillows adjusted just in such and such a way. Read the whole book in 4 hours. While I was reading the book, and I've seen comments on YouTube videos that said the same thing, while I was reading the book, the pain disappeared completely. So, let me tell you about the book, and there's all kinds of information. The book's still available, and he also wrote some other books, but the first book is great. There's nothing wrong with the first book. The book says that most back pain is not caused by physiological reasons. Most back pain and sciatica is caused by stress, and the reason for this is that when you're tense, your muscles get tight, and when your muscles are tight, they don't receive the amount of oxygen that they need in order to function normally, and that causes pain. And there's all kinds of things I could say that are in the book, but I don't want to say that. I want you to read the book because he can say it better than I can. But I'm here to tell you about my experience. So basically he said you got to start moving normally, stop using braces and crutches and this and that, and stop putting your pillows a certain way. Do everything normally. And that translates to what I say now, the cure for sciatica. Just keep moving. That is the cure for sciatica. And the worse it hurts, the more important it is that you do keep moving. And the other thing I like to say is move into the pain. Relax and move into the pain. The pain is the fear of pain makes the pain worse. The fear of pain makes you tense up more. Okay? Say you have a curve in your back. You amplify that curve and you start getting, the lower back is too curved too much, because what you're doing is you're trying to escape the spasm, because when you try to straighten out the lower back you get a spasm. So you arch the back even more to try to escape the spasm, and that makes the pain worse. So what you have to do because of that situation is you have to move into the pain. So I devised a exercise that I can still do if I need to. I still get a little back pain, a little sciatica, but I just get it for a day or two and then it goes away because I know what to do about it. I mean, there's no such thing as escaping stress. Life is always going to be stressful. But now that I know that it's not caused by an injury or something wrong with the inside of my body, I'm not afraid of it anymore. So while I was at the postal center, I would lean back on the counter, stand right in front of the counter, and the top of the counter was about level with my hands. Put my hands behind me on the counter. So the counter's behind me. I put my hands on the counter and then move my feet forward like a few inches if it was real bad. And then slowly relax while I bend my knees and go into or toward a squatting position. What this does, if you try it, is it straightens out the arch in your back. But your hands are holding you up. Your hands don't have any pain. The sciatica doesn't affect your arms that much. So you got to relax and breathe. Kind of breathe into the lower back. Take that arch out of the lower back. That overly arched lower back is really what causes sciatica. Another thing I was doing when I first started that job I told you about, my first serious full-time job at the pipe organ factory, I was very nervous, so I might have injured myself also at that time by popping my back, by leaning backwards until my back popped. I was doing that compulsively. But I think I was doing it because I was very nervous. I wasn't a job person at all. It was very stressful for me. But I still tried, and I think I might have injured myself a little bit, and then, it just got worse and worse. Obviously, I had no idea what to do about it. But back at the postal center, I started doing this exercise, and there's a graphic of it at the front and end of this movie. The spine looks kind of like a snake, like an S. That's why they call it a spine, because spine rhymes with snake, Starts with an S and ends with a silent E. Anyway, the head's a little bit forward, so there's kind of a curve on the neck, and then the upper back curves the other direction, and then the lower back curves the other direction, so it's kind of like an S. What you want to do is you want to straighten out all those curves a little bit, because you curve them too much to try and escape a spasm when you start spazzing in your lower back. So I did this exercise a lot, and okay, I said that the pain went away completely while I was reading this book, and it did. Completely. I mean, I got out of bed effortlessly when I was done reading this book. There was no more pain, and then it came back, but it went away gradually while I did these exercises over a period of weeks, a few weeks. It went away completely. And now, whenever I get an attack of sciatica or lower back pain or both, I just keep moving. So this exercise is very good. It teaches you, because you're in control, you don't move into the pain quickly. That's not a good idea, because it's just going to spaz out. If you move into it slowly and force yourself to relax and continue breathing, and allow, you're not forcing anything, you're allowing the lower back to straighten out gradually. And with each increment of motion, as you bend your knees and lower more into a squatting position, you're holding yourself up with your hands on the countertop or the table or whatever behind you. With each increment of motion, you feel the pain, and then it dissolves. You dissolve the pain this way because you find that the pain is not going to kill you. The pain is benign. It's not harming you. The fear of the pain makes the pain worse because then you tense up more. So anyhow, you get all the way down to where you can't get down any further, and then you go back up gradually. And you just do this a lot. Do it over and over. Do it many times a day. It worked for me. I don't know what's going to work for you. I'm not a doctor. Maybe I look like one, but I'm not one. By the way, we have quack doctors here in the Philippines. But here in the Philippines, the quack doctor is not a term of disparagement. It's like junk food. You go to the grocery store here, and there's an aisle labeled junk food. The term junk food is not a term of just disparagement. You go to a picnic and someone says, "Did you remember to bring the junk food?" Okay. And then quack doctors, same way. So they got doctors here that are not MDs. They'd be herbalists and massage therapists and herbalists, and maybe both. So, yeah, they got quack doctors here. I can think of two right off the bat. I've had more than two, but I've had a few bad episodes of sciatica and back pain over the years since that time, since that was, 30 years ago. One was when I was working at a pizza restaurant as a delivery boy. I was probably 47. It was a pretty bad job. There was nothing much to like about it. The owner was an amateur. He didn't know what he was doing, and I didn't like it very much. It was a job, and I needed it. And the problem was the most despicable thing about it was that there were gambling machines. This was in Oregon. They had some gambling machines back then. They probably still do. It was legal gambling. You sit there. These guys would sit there at this machine and pump money into it, and you'd give them as many beers as they wanted to buy. And it was a big old crock of doo-doo because the owner said, you got to keep the place open until they feel like leaving. And some of these guys were late-nighters, so I had some 12-hour shifts. I'm sitting there. One guy is chain smoking and drinking beers and gambling, not making any pizza, not doing anything, just sitting there breathing his smoke and waiting for him to leave for hours. Okay, I think that's what caused that attack of sciatica. It was stress and sitting in a chair too much because there was nothing else to do. One day I was opening the restaurant and I was late to work because it took me 20 minutes to lean over and tie my shoes. That's not an exaggeration. It was a bad attack of sciatica. And the boss, when the boss came to work, he said, I called the store at opening time and you weren't there. Why were you late? And I said, well, he was all mad. I said, well, you're lucky I came to work at all because it took me 20 minutes to bend over and tie my shoes. He didn't say anything after that, but he did develop an attitude, and his attitude was that I had an attitude. I didn't actually have an attitude, but, well, okay, I had an attitude. But he was an amateur. This is Oregon, you gotta... The West Coast people are kind of different. Then I had another very bad attack of sciatica here in the Philippines several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I don't know. And this was another time where the fronts of my legs started getting numb, and I even had pain in one of my testicles. I don't remember which one. I sent a letter to my family, said, I have pain in one of my testicles. And nobody wrote me back to say, let's talk about it, I had a trip planned to the U.S., and I wanted to get it taken care of. I was worried about my balls. So I went to the doctor and had to wait several days because there's no urologist in the city I live. I had to wait for a visiting urologist to show up at the hospital. And so I went to him, and I ended up educating him. I had to say, the cure for sciatica is you just keep moving. And he said, oh, yeah, that's true. So I paid him so that he could be educated by me. It's all right. It was worth it. Something else that happened many years ago here in the Philippines was that I was working on websites and stuff, and I spent way too much time in front of a computer, and my mouse or my keyboard and my mouse, or one or the other or both, was on a table in front of me, and instead of right in front of me, I was having to bend over to get to them or something. I don't remember. Anyhow, bad posture, leaning over too far and too long, and spending too much time in front of the computer, and I got upper back pain. I never really had a lot of upper back pain before, but one day I realized, well, why don't I just do it the same way as I did lower back pain? Take that curve out, because the upper back was too curved. And I was having this terrible upper back pain. It was very uncomfortable. So I tried to lay down flat on my back and found out I couldn't, because my upper back was too curved. My plan was to put a pillow under my shoulder blades and uncurve my upper back and take it the other direction. And I couldn't even lay on a flat bed. I couldn't put my hands over my head. So I ended up putting a thin pillow under my head and then relaxing down into the flatness of the bed. And then eventually I'd use just a towel instead of a pillow, and then take the towel out from under my head until I could lay flat on the bed. And then eventually I could put a small pillow under my shoulder blades. And then if I lay there like 10, 15 minutes, I noticed that my upper back started popping, which I never knew you could pop your upper back by yourself. I knew of a way that you can do it if you have two people, but I don't recommend doing that. It's kind of stressful to the body. It's forcing. I don't like forcing. I don't like forcing anything to pop. Finally, I was able to lay down on my back with a pillow under my back and instantly pop my upper back. Just like that. Can't really do it anymore. Of course, I'm still in front of the computer, but for a long time, for years, I was okay. And then, recently my body is just turning to snot. I'm 68, and I wanted to make this movie and let you know that the key for young people, I don't know about someone my age, I don't think there's any cure for old age, but if you're young and flexible and able to push back on these pains, the key is to move into the pain. Take the spasm out by taking the spasm on. You take it on. You challenge yourself. You relax, breathe, move into the pain gradually. I mean, that's what I do. If you got an injury, well, don't do what your doctor tells you not to do, obviously. Disclaimer, I'm not responsible for any stupid things you might do. You make your own decisions. Listen to your doctor or whatever. I mean, they're wrong most of the time, but you still got to listen to them and make your decisions based on something sensible. But read the book, Mind Over Back Pain. Learn to relax. Keep moving. Get out of your chair. Turn off the computer. Turn off the TV. Go outside. Go for a walk. Take your dogs for a walk. Take your dogs for another walk. Exercise. Work in the garden. Meditate. Relax. Don't think so much. Don't worry so much. Get a different job if you have to. Stop working 3 jobs. Move if your house is too expensive. Get a house you can afford. Do whatever you need to do. Get the stress out of your life and stop worrying so much. And read Mind Over Back Pain by John E. Sarno. That's about all I had to say today. Thanks for showing up. This is Professor UD Guru. I'll see you in the next movie. Bye-bye.